Namaste and welcome to the third episode of Flutter State Management Hero series. If you have not already, please watch the previous episodes where I describe what state management is, and also we build a quiz API from scratch using Nest.js or Node.js framework. However, if you do not want to build your own API, you can simply use my version of quiz API that I have deployed to Heroku, or you can even deploy your own version in the Heroku by using this one-click deploy to Heroku button from my repository. So go to the repository for Nest quiz. The link is provided in the description, and there you'll find a deploy to Heroku button. And if you tap that Heroku button, you'll be redirected to Heroku dashboard. If you have not already, create an account and log into Heroku. It's free and you can deploy various basic applications for free. So using this, you can deploy very own copy of your application, and in the DB URI, you should set up a MongoDB Atlas database and provide the connection URI. The process is described in my Nest.js fundamentals tutorial of this series. You can check the tutorial link in the description or here in the pop-up. So once you deploy this app, which I have already deployed, you'll get a URI for that application. So let me show you. So if I go to Heroku dashboard, I've already deployed, and this is the version that we'll be using, Nest Quiz Test. And if you tap on that after deploying, you'll get something similar. And if you tap on that and tap this open app button, you should get the link for your API. And here if I tap /categories, then I can get the list of my categories. So in order to continue with this tutorial, either deploy your own or make your own locally, or even use my version of quiz API. I'll be using this in our Flutter application to continue developing this app. Now, in order to continue with our app, we need to first get the base code for this tutorial that you can do from my GitHub State Hero repository. And you can simply use git clone. So I'll copy this clone URL, and here inside Flutter YouTube in my project folder, I will clone git clone, and I'll name this Flutter Trivia. So this will be cloned inside Flutter Trivia folder. Now I'll open it with VS Code. Now let me close this and close this as well. So if we go to our VS Code now, we should get something like this. We should be able to get packages. If you don't see that get packages, you can simply go to terminal, VS Code terminal, and run flutter pub get. And for this, I am using the Flutter master channel. So I'm using master channel so that this application can run on web and desktop as well. So you can also use the master channel, or you can simply continue from Flutter stable channel as well. Whichever you have installed by default, you can continue with that master, beta, or dev channel, or even stable channel. So once you are able to get packages, popspec.yaml get packages, this error should be gone. Let's see, we have some errors. Elevated button. Okay. So if you get this kind of error, this is simply because of the IDE. Maybe restarting the IDE will fix this error. Let me try again. Let's hope it does. Now we should be able to run our code. And in order to run our code, I will run it, let's say, in the desktop. I'll simply run it in the desktop version first. Tap F5 to run, and we'll see what has been done till now. It's building. It will take some time to build and run. Okay, now it's built and it's running on my Linux machine here as a Linux app. I can tap play now, and it has some default questions and categories here that we can simply test. So it's a somewhat functioning quiz application, however, all with static data. We are not using any API or connecting to any API or any database to load these things. So now what we'll do is we will integrate REST API using HTTP package, and we will get the questions and categories from REST API. So let us get started. Let us now add the dependencies. So here I'll add HTTP, and it's at 0.12.2 version. And after adding this, either your IDE will run Flutter pop get automatically, or you can tap this button here, or you can even run Flutter pop get from your terminal. Let's simply look at the folder structures to get acquainted with it. I am following somewhat the principle of clean code to separate various layers, but a little bit simplified version. So inside my lib folder, there is a core folder, and this core folder are for those resources like application, those widgets and other resources that are shared across the application. So this is inside the core folder where I have presentation. Inside presentation, I have widgets, some core widgets that are shared across the application. For example, here I have a bordered container. Next, I have a resource folder where I have various files like app constants, assets, colors, database constants, routes, sizes, themes, etc. So these are just for making the application scalable and folder structure proper. I follow this folder structure almost in all of my projects. I find it easy to find my files and work with them properly. And then I have features folder. So features folder are for each individual features. And here, for example, if we look at the quiz folder inside feature folder, so quiz is a feature in our application, and it has two different folders inside it, data and presentation. So inside presentation, we again have pages and widgets. So pages are for screens of application, and widgets are for various reusable widgets across application. So this is the general folder structure we'll follow. And inside data, we have again models, and we can have services folder and other different folders that are related to our data. So inside models, we have category model, question model, and then we have a view model for our quiz page, and again view model for our quiz summary page. If you look at those pages, you'll find how these are used to transfer data from one page to another during navigation. Now, the first thing we will do is we will create JSON serialization for our category and questions model. So if we look at the category model, we just have ID and title. However, if we check our API, so nest quiz / categories, if we check our API, we have three different fields: ID, title and description. So let's add description as well, though we'll not be using it. And once we have this, I have installed a VS Code extension, that is Dart data class generator. So I have installed this extension. If you have not installed this extension, it is still in beta, but it is quite powerful. So I'll be using this to generate to map and from map method that will convert our JSON to category model. So when in description, tap control and greater than sign or control dot, then tap this option, generate data class. Once you do this, you can see the changes. So we have a constructor, then we have copy with, then we have to map, okay, and from map, and for our from map, this ID should be underscore ID, to JSON, from JSON. So this will convert into JSON string and convert from JSON string, okay. And finally we have equality operator and hash code overridden. So we have a complete data class for our category, and this was simply with a tap of a button. And we can do the same for our questions. So for questions, we have ID, questions, options, answer. I think this is all that we need for our questions. So let's try. Limit 10. Okay, we have options, ID, question, answer, and category ID. So I think I have missed category ID. Okay, now once we have this, again control dot and generate data class. Now we have our data class for questions as well. So from map, change this to underscore ID. Simply by using this extension, we were able to generate our data class that will easily handle our JSON serialization and deserialization to work with complex JSON structures in our application. Once we have our data classes, let us create our API service. So API service is something that is shared across our application. So inside core folder, create data, and inside data, let's create services folder, and inside that, let's create underscore service dot file. So we have our API service file, and in this service file, let us create a class API service, and here our base URL will be the URL for our API. Next quiz test.herokuapp.com. Okay, and now let us create a function that will return a list of categories and list of questions. So future list category get categories. So this function will get a list of categories from API, deserialize it into a category model and return as a future. So category URL will be $URL/categories. Now we need to import HTTP package as HTTP. So now we can perform here .get, and our URL will be category URL. Let's await this. Now if rest.status code equals 200, so if the request is successful, we get status 200, else we'll simply return null. Okay, and here final rest dot body. Okay, so we need to convert this into list of categories. So if this is successful, we get back a list of category as JSON. So to convert this, return category from category dot from JSON data. So this rest dot body is string. Okay, from JSON expects string, iterable dynamic. Sorry, this should be list. So I think we need to do some changes. So let's JSON decode for this. We need to import dot convert, so this library, and once we have JSON decode, we get a list. So this, our data is a list, so we can use dot map cat, and this will be dot from map our category from data. So this will return a list of categories. Again, we'll do the similar for getting a list of questions. So let's simply duplicate this and let's change this to question, and let's make this get questions, and this will accept two optional parameters, category ID and limit default 10. Okay, and we will create questions URL, and this will be URL slash questions limit $limit, and if ID is not equal to null, we simply add, let's make this var question URL plus equals $& dollar equals, this should be category ID equals category ID. Okay, and finally await get and share list of question from data map, and this should be question dot from map. Okay, so we now have our API service that can get a list of categories, convert it into a category model and return, and similar for get a list of questions. Okay, once we have this, we can first go to our categories page. So inside categories, before list view, we need to wrap this with a future builder. So we don't have future builder, so I'll wrap it with a stream builder, and instead of stream builder here I'll use future builder, and this will be a list category, and this should be future, and our future is API service dot get categories. Okay, and this should have a snapshot. So here what we'll do is, if has data, if snapshot dot has data, that is request is successful and we get back the data, we return list view. Otherwise we simply progress indicator. Okay, and here categories snapshot dot data. So the data returned by snapshot will be the list of categories, and in list view will instead use list view dot builder. So simply remove this list view builder, and item count will be categories dot length. Then item builder will return category item. Category will be categories index, and on top will be underscore category pressed context, and title will be okay. This should have our proper list of categories from API. Let's tap play now. If everything goes correctly, we should be able to view the list of categories from our API here in our application. Okay, so we are able to get the list of categories. Now let us make few more changes. So here, instead of passing the title, we'll pass the category in category pressed, and let's change this category, and this should be category, and let's update the quiz options dialog. Here, instead of title, okay, now we have category, and here while displaying, display category dot title. And finally, when starting the quiz, we need to get a list of questions from our API. So when starting the quiz, to get a list of questions from the API, again here, let's make this async. Yeah, it's already async. So final questions equals await API service dot get questions, and here we'll pass in category ID will be reset.category.id, then limit underscore number of questions that we select in the options dialog. So this should get a list of questions. And finally, if questions is not equal to null, we simply navigate. Now so we can use push replacement named, context will be context, approach.quiz, and then we'll pass in arguments will be our quiz page view model. So we can see it here what we are using. So quiz page view model, and this practice mode underscore practice mode, category wizard.category, and finally questions will be our questions. Using this, we should be able to create this. We have some error here, so this should be, I think this title should be category. So now we have a list of categories. If we select the category, we should be able to get the questions related to that category. So let's select 10, let's select practice mode, and we should be able to get general knowledge questions, 10 questions. So we are able to get 10 different questions from quiz API. If we now go back and try some other category, let's say film, we should be able to get questions related to film category. So we have different questions related to film categories. Okay, and we have our quiz application. I have loaded my API with the questions from OpenTDB.com. So it's a free trivia API or free trivia questions API that is available freely that you can use in your application. I even have a Open Trivia application developed using that API. So I have loaded my server with those questions for the purpose of this tutorial. We are now ready to move on to the next phase to apply state management in our application. So the code up until this stage can be found in the step 1 branch of the repository that you cloned. So if you check out to the step 1, the completed code can be found there. So if you have any problem during this tutorial following along, you can check out that branch and compare your code with that branch in order to find any mistakes or any problems that you had in your application. Thank you everyone. See you again in the next episode where we will start implementing state management solution in our application to make application much cleaner and share data between widgets and screens easily.